making a city that already.
Okay, everybody.
That's why I don't like our red.
Alright, so I know we just had a really fun recess, but we have some stuff that we have to get through before we hit our next recess time. So the first thing I want to talk to you, everybody, about is social studies. And yesterday and today, if you remember, we read the chapter this morning. And Joshua, can you tell me what that chapter was mostly about?
It was mostly about how the economy grew in Mexico after the.
So you used that big word economy. Economy kind of means like buying and selling things, kind of how the whole money system works. That's what the word economy means. That's a big high school vocabulary word. It's really good. It was also about the ranchos and trading for cowhide and how the people who own the huge ranchos, remember we talked about how like the city of Walnut was once a huge rancho that was owned by one family? Wait, why is it so? No, everybody should be sitting down. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're all sitting down, right?
It's a Star Wars.
We're all sitting down.
Yeah, the Star Wars ones.
I'm very disappointed in all the noise. I want everybody to know. I'm very disappointed in all the noise. Because I'm trying to tell a story. And this story is about Mrs. Paul. Does everybody know who Mrs. Paul is? She teaches speech. Some of us are lucky enough to go to her class. Mrs. Paul has chickens. You know, Mrs. Paul, you know that she has chickens, and her chickens lay eggs, right? And so she gets all the eggs. She gets all the eggs that she wants, and then way more than she could ever use because she has so many chickens, right? But her neighbor doesn't have any chickens, and so he has to go to the store to buy eggs. But what his neighbor could also do, because Mrs. Paul's neighbor has all these plants, and all these plants, she has like a rosemary plant, a basil plant, a garlic plant, all these big plants that she can use for cooking. And so what Mrs. Paul does is she trades some of her chicken's eggs for some of her neighbor's cooking herbs and plants. That way they don't have to go to the store to get those things. They can help each other out. Yeah, they barter, they trade these things. And then I have another story because I have orange trees. I've got a bunch of orange. I've got later. I've got 4 different orange trees, right? So I've got 4 different orange trees, and so I get tons of oranges. Like, what am I going to do with all these oranges? I can't eat that many oranges. I can't eat them all. And after a while, I get kind of tired of oranges. So I started peeking over the fence in my neighbor's yard, seeing what kind of stuff my neighbors had over there. No, they got a little wall. I can see over it. I'm pretty tall. But what they have is they have avocado trees. And okay, I don't know what happened to it. You have to keep track of these things. I don't know where it went. So, my neighbor, though, has avocados, and I love avocados. I put avocados in everything. And I asked him, I said, can I trade one of my oranges for one of your avocados? And you know what he said? He said, no, I only have 1 avocado tree, and you have 4 orange trees. So if you give me 4 oranges, I'll give you 1 avocado.
That seems so fair. No, that seems fair because
okay, but I have way too many oranges anyway. So I said, yeah, I'll trade you 4 of my oranges for 1 avocado. And so then this is what we did. We traded, and I got avocados, and then my neighbor got oranges. But this year, I don't know if you know this year there's a huge drought, right? And so we didn't get much rain earlier this year. And so my neighbor's avocado tree only produced half the avocado. And so then he hardly had enough avocados for him to eat. He hardly had any extras. And so then I came over with my bag of oranges, and I said, all right, I'm ready to trade for some avocados. My neighbor said, not so fast. I only have half as many avocados as I did last year. So guess what? the price of an avocado just went up.
Oh.
I said, what do you mean it just went up? And he said, well, I don't have very many of them, so now they're more rare. There's fewer of these now. If anybody likes Pokemon, there's some Pokemon cards that are very rare, and rare means there's not very many of them. There's very few of them. There's a lot of rare things, there's very rare things in the game of Minecraft too. I'm sure that only takes a little while to find. Yeah. Okay, so then I pulled out my 4 oranges. Oh, okay, let's be quiet. So I pulled out my 4 oranges, and I said, I'm ready to trade my 4 oranges. But he said, no, the price went up. I said, what do you mean it went up? And he said, because I only have half of my avocados, you have to give me twice as many oranges. And I said, 8 oranges. That's a lot of oranges. But because I still had so many, and he had so few avocados, I said, okay, you know what, I really like avocados that much. I need them for my sandwiches and my salads. So I'll give you your 8 oranges. So I traded him 8 whole oranges. Oh, okay, back in our seats, please. Back in our seats, please. But it's okay because I had so many extra oranges. I made it work. But that's what it means when something is rare. When something's rare, like this avocado right here, you have to spend more money to get it, or you have to trade more oranges. Okay? So I wanted to talk about that. Okay, so we're very loud right now. I need to take it because I want everyone to understand that this is what the people in California had to do. They had to trade for things. And what did California have lots of? It had lots of ranchos, big, huge areas of land, right? So, they had so much cattle land and cows that what they did is they didn't have as many oranges. There were some oranges, but what they really had was cows. And they had lots of cow skin, cow hide to make leather. And they had lots of tallow, which we talked about, to make candles and soap. So people in California, yes, they didn't use real money like we did. They had to find other ways. They had to find other ways to buy things from the Americans and from the Russians and from the other people who would go there to trade. Okay? So, I want to talk about how the people in California, because they lived on these huge ranches, they needed tools, right? They needed tools, they needed saddles for their horses, they needed boots, and the women needed clothes and food and spices. And the women wanted jewelry too, because, I mean, you have to have good luxury items like jewelry. Yeah, Anthony? This is a different time in California. So this time in California is all cattle land. Just think nothing but cows. There's more cows than people.
Like this?
Yeah, back then there's like 10 times more cows than people in the whole state. Okay?
Yes, and
But, so the people in these ranches needed all this stuff, but they only had cow hides and they only had the tallow from the cows to trade. Well, yeah, but they couldn't trade the meat because the meat would go bad. The meat would spoil. So they had to trade the hides and they had to trade the tallow with the American traders that would go to see them. So what they would do is they would take all their, after the rodeos, they would take all their extra hides, they would take all their extra tallow, and they'd set up shop at the beach. Just like when you guys were in 3rd grade, did you have a bartering day?
Oh, yeah.
Where you set up shop and you brought stuff and you traded people? Did we do that?
Yeah.
Oh, and you had an auction in 3rd grade.
Yeah, this person bought a pencil for $20,000, remember?
All right. So yeah.
No, not you. I bought.
Yeah, so it was just like that. It was just like that. But each rancho had their own shop, and they would set up and have like an auction, like a trading auction, with the people. Hold it down, please. So, So yeah, they traded their goods. And now, I want you I want to show a chart. And this chart has different values to give you an example of what some of the people used to trade. Okay? And like what something would be worth. Because would it be fair to trade one cowhide for one orange?
No.
Probably not, right? Because cowhide's huge, and you could do so many things with it. Like you could make shoes, like I'm wearing like leather shoes. Okay? You could do so many things with cowhide. You can make blankets, clothes, all these different things. With an orange, you just eat it, and that's it. So people had to decide on the value. What could a cowhide be worth to make a fair trade? Right? And so here was an example that I found online, and it's a good example of what they used to trade cowhides for. As soon as this starts up, I'll show you. But one of the things was 8 ounces of cinnamon.
8 ounces?
Yeah. So okay. So 8 ounces, you might think 8 ounces, that's not very much. That's like less than a bottle of water full of cinnamon. Or a whole cowhide. So what does that tell you about cinnamon?
It's very rare.
It's very rare, right?
good.
A lot of times it came from China, and it had to travel all the way around the world just to get where they were. And they wanted the cinnamon for their cooking. It was so important. Also, 1 pair of leather boots. That's interesting. So they traded 1 whole cowhide for 1 pair of leather boots.
That was rare.
It was because they couldn't make the leather boots at the ranches. They had to send the hides all the way to New York and Boston. That way they would make the shoes there in the factories, and then they would send them all the way back. That way the rancheros could use them on their horses. Well, yeah, and that's why it was so expensive. You could probably make 10 pairs of shoes out of 1 hide, but because they had to travel so far, it made them worth more money. There's also 1 gold ring, 6 yards of velvet, 8 pounds of coffee.
Coffee. 2 pounds of chocolate. Coffee.
So yeah, coffee.
Coffee. 1 gold ring. Coffee.
Yeah, so 1 gold ring. Imagine that. 1 cow skin can be worth 1 gold ring, or was worth 1
So if
gold
you were
ring.
told this one has butter on your cow gets more, and you have to hold gold.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why
That's
the people that own these ranches were so wealthy, because the cowhides were worth so much. But then also, they had the tallow barrel. So this is like a big barrel full of tallow, right? And this they could trade for 2 yards of silk, 1 child's doll, or 2 pounds of chocolate. So which one is more valuable, the hide or the tallow? The hide is more valuable, right? Because they get the gold ring. The tallow, this is a big, imagine a barrel like as big as you are, like full of this tallow. Right, and then you can only trade it for $1.
How?
Right, so it's not worth as much. This is not as rare, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna split the class in half, and let's see how many people we have. 6,
Yeah,
10.
Minus 2.
Oh, we're missing 3 today.
27.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do, and I want everyone to listen to these instructions very closely. So I'm gonna ring this bell. And can I get eyes on me, please? Eyes on me, let's see some full body listening. Alright, so I'm gonna give everybody a card. I have pink cards, and I have green cards, okay? And these are trading cards.